Hey guys, so for homework this week, we're going to be looking at Anne Sexton's poem, Her Kind. And in class, we're talking about the Crucible, we're reading about the Salem witch trials. Her Kind is a modern poem about witches, or as Anne Sexton calls them, the disaligned. Now, a little bit about Anne Sexton. She was a confessional poet in the 1960s, 1970s. She was not as academically accepted during her lifetime as she probably should have been. This is in part because she wrote about very, very controversial topics. She was a confessional poet, which means that she put everything on paper. There was no topic off limits, there was nothing she wouldn't say. And this made a lot of people very, very nervous. So her poem, Her Kind, is kind of her rebuttal to those people. And in Her Kind, she's addressing what it means to be different, what it means to be the outcast. So, I want to talk a little bit about Sexton's background before you read the poem. In this poem, Her Kind, she's addressing what it is to be disaligned, to not fit in, to be the outcast. But when you look at pictures of Sexton here, she looks quite friendly. She was a beautiful woman. She was actually a model in her younger years. And it's important to note that Sexton really struggled with mental illness throughout her life, that she often felt misunderstood and was frankly probably misdiagnosed for a portion of her life. It wasn't until she started seeing a specific therapist who recommended she tried writing that she got into poetry. And so for her, mental illness always made her feel like an outsider. It made her feel secluded. And this is how she's able to adopt the voice of the disaligned, as she calls it in the poem. Now, I do want you to take a moment, pause the video, and read the poem. So I know you just finished reading Her Kind, and you're probably thinking, oh my gosh, what does Miss Berg have us reading? And I know it's a little bit odd, it's a little bit unusual. There's burning and flames and naked arms waving at the end there. But let's just kind of take it one stanza at a time. Let's start with the first stanza. And in this stanza, she is calling herself a witch. Let me pull the actual text up here. She says she's a possessed witch. She's haunting the black air. She's dreaming evil. She's flying over the houses at night. She's 12 fingered. She's not quite a woman. And so in the stanza, she's playing on all the stereotypes of witches that we have. But she then turns it on us and she says, I have been her kind. I have been that stereotype. I have been lonely and possessed and disfigured. She's assuming that identity and really owning it. In the first stanza, where she is flying over the town, in the second stanza, she is living outside of the town. She says she found the warm caves in the woods. And to me, the fact that she found them implies that she has been pushed out of society, she's been exiled, that she is physically becoming an outcast. But she's taking these warm caves, this idea of comfort, warm is such a powerful word here, these comforting caves, these warm caverns, and she's filling them with skillets, carvings, shelves, closets, silks, innumerable goods. This idea that she's been pushed out of society, but she's not upset about it. She is happy to be removed, that she's happy to live in her warm cave and gather up her goods, and she can rearrange the disaligned. That's probably my favorite line in this poem. The idea that when she's removed from society, she can do her own thing. She can take the broken pieces and put them together. And I think that's a really powerful statement. And I think it's something more emotional than physical, that she herself is disaligned. She herself is broken. And when she's removed from society, she's given an opportunity to kind of put herself back together. Now, the third stanza is where this gets a little bit violent and a little bit upsetting. She says she has ridden in your cart, driver. So she becomes more aggressive in this section. She's talking about you, that as the reader, we are the driver, we are the person who's exiled her. And she's waving her nude arms. So this idea of being stripped, both physically and possibly emotionally, and taken on the last bright routes to her death, where the flames still bite her thighs. So again, she's returning to this idea of being maybe being a witch and being burned alive or burned at the stake, but it's the idea of persecution. So here she has in the first stanza ownership over who she is. In the second stanza, we have the idea of being outcast or pushed away from society. And in the third stanza, the idea of being tortured or persecuted by society. But if you notice, at the end of the third stanza, she says she is not ashamed to die. She doesn't fear death because she's proud of who she is, that she has been herself. And so while this is a very dark piece, it's almost like a battle cry for identity. So if you look at the title of the poem, it's obviously Her Kind, which is that refrain that's at the end of each stanza. However, the refrain at the end of each stanza says, I have been her kind. And I think it's interesting to note that Sexton leaves the I have been part off of the title. Rather, she saves it for the end of each stanza and for the repetition, I think to establish, again, this idea of a battle cry or identity. Sorry, distracted. And by saying, I have been her kind, I have been her kind, she's taking over ownership again of her identity. She's asking us to think, too, a little bit by using just her kind as the title and then the refrain throughout the poem, if we have ever been her kind. Have you ever been held up against a stereotype? Have you ever been kind of pushed out from a group or society? Have you ever felt persecuted? And if you have, then she's asking, have you ever been her kind? I do want to point out very quickly some interesting structural issues happening in this poem. You'll notice that there are several odd numbers throughout the poem. Again, emphasis on the word odd. There are 3 stanzas, 7 lines per stanza. So when anytime you have odd numbers, there's always the idea of being left out or something being just slightly off. And Sexton's doing that on purpose. Also, there is a rhyme scheme present in the poem, but the rhyme scheme is even a little bit off. The lines are almost all the same length, but not quite. And she's doing this purposefully. She wants the poem to feel like it almost fits, but something's just a tiny bit off. And this, again, is a reflection on her character. She almost fits in society, but she's just a tiny bit off. Now, before you start answering questions, remember you only have to do 10 of the 14 questions, I want you to watch the poem again. This is a clip from Poetry Out Loud. This is a young woman from the North Carolina School of Science and Math, and her rendition of Her Kind is really powerful. It's a little bit overwhelming at times, but watch this and then try to answer the questions. Also, you have an audio of Anne Sexton reading the poem in your Her Kind homework file, so that might be helpful as well.
Her Kind by Anne Sexton. I have gone out, a possessed witch, haunting the black air, braver at night. Dreaming evil, I have done my hitch over the plain houses, light by light. Lonely thing, 12-fingered, out of mind. A woman like that is not a woman, quite. I have been her kind. I have found the warm caves in the woods, filled them with skillets, carvings, shelves, closets, silks, innumerable goods. Fix the suppers for the worms and the elves, whining, rearranging the disaligned. A woman like that is misunderstood. I have been her kind. I have ridden in your cart, driver, waved my nude arms at villages going by, learning the last bright roots, survivor, where your flames still bite my thigh and my ribs crack, where your wheels wind. A woman like that is not ashamed to die. I have been her kind. Thank you.